Hello, and welcome to the CDO Magazine interview series. I am Denise Collison with SHI International, and we are partnering with CDO Magazine, MIT CDOIQ, and the International Society of Chief Data Officers in a series of interviews. And today I have the pleasure of speaking with Justin Marsico, CDO and Deputy Assistant Commissioner of the Bureau of Fiscal Service. Welcome, Justin.
Hey, thanks for having me, Denise.
I know Bureau of Fiscal Service has moved to the cloud recently, and you've been moving data sets to a new format that make it more meaningful and efficient for constituent engagement, which we were talking about before. Can you walk us through that journey high level and give us insight into lessons learned? Because that's a major shift, moving data to the cloud.
Yeah, well, I would say we are on a journey to move our data to the cloud, but it's really a journey that we are in the early stages of. So across Fiscal Service, we do have some systems which are totally cloud-based. One example is usaspending.gov. That's a place where members of the public can go to get access to information on federal grants and federal contracts and spending. And we have some other systems that are on premises. We have some mainframe-based systems. And right now, what we're trying to do across the Fiscal Service is to develop and execute an orderly plan for moving data and moving systems into more modern environments. And there's like a lot to be said about this, and this is mostly a initiative that's being led by our IT leadership within the Fiscal Service. But one thing that I can say from my perspective as the data officer is that one important lesson when you're moving to the cloud is to really think about the state of your data in systems, in databases, and the extent to which you can do work as you're transitioning it, so that you're actually leveraging the capabilities that the cloud has to offer. I think one thing that is really tempting for a lot of people when they have teams that are skilled in a certain area and they've run systems in a certain way is to figure out how to copy and paste that into a cloud environment.
Yeah.
And I think what people find out later is that it's much more expensive to do things that way. And it makes it a little bit harder for them to get access to some of the benefits of actually being in the cloud.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing that we've been trying to really focus on here is making sure that as we're transitioning to the cloud, we're doing the work that needs to be done and not just keeping our old patterns and porting them over.
That's really insightful. And I think you're probably right. I think people do mostly come into it thinking it's just move it from here to here. And so I asked you for lessons learned, and that's a really big one. So thank you for sharing that. So let's talk about AI and ML. Again, I think there's some confusion, first of all, for some people between AI and ML. So artificial intelligence and machine learning. I think people sometimes get those two things confused. So maybe you can just give the briefest explanation of what each is, and then how important are they to a successful data analytics program?
Yeah, I think that there's, in my experience, like reading and working across this space, it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of consensus about what specifically the definitions are.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of leads to a lot of the confusion that people see. And I think, unfortunately, that combined with the just prevalence of AI advertisements, I think leads some people to think that it's just a trend or it's just, a buzzword or something like that.
Yeah.
But anyway, the way that I think about both of these technologies or capabilities is the ability for the machine to take over some type of processing that's typically done by a human. And within AI, that processing tends to be more cognitive processing. And it tends to focus more, at least in my experience, on activities like understanding text or understanding problems that are very complicated. And within machine learning, the use cases tend to be more about feeding back in and having an algorithm that is self-reinforcing, and that develops and learns from itself. But again, I've seen these two things as separate, and as machine learning is a subset of AI. So
no,
I don't know.
It's a good conversation. It's good to have the perspective. And that's why I asked the question, because I think there is differing perspectives and there is a lot of confusion. I think I am not a data officer, but I think the perspective from non-data people, if you will, is that those two things are extremely confusing, right? Or that they're the same thing, or So I think it's important to keep talking about it so that, you told us about how important it is to give context to the data and make the data accessible to constituents. Well, I think we also need to have them understand what tools are being used to, analyze these data points and these data sets and give them that understanding as well. So that was really helpful. I appreciate that.
The way that we try to get around this problem is we kind of talk about advanced analytics as being a category that's separate from regular analytics. And advanced analytics contains both AI and machine learning within one bucket. And the reason that we kind of go with that distinction is that within the organization, we're trying to create the capability across the workforce to be able to do some type of analytics. Like one of the things that's really important, I think, is that a member of a workforce across any business line, if they don't know how to create a dashboard, they know where to go to figure out how to do it. And that is a form of analytics. It could be a form of descriptive or predictive analytics, but that's a skill that I think is important to teach across the organization. Advanced analytics is something that I think needs to be centralized in many organizations. It's not something that you want people just playing around with or experimenting with if they don't have the expertise and they don't know how to test it. We want to think about how to deploy AI and machine learning in responsible ways so that we don't unintentionally create bias or to create some bad outcome that you've read about in the newspaper before. So we kind of create that distinction of like, this is the type of work that business lines should be able to do on their own. And this is the type of work where you should come to a central office that focuses on this and specializes in this to get help.
That's a really great distinction. And I think that probably makes it more accessible for people across an organization who are being asked to do more analytics and use data more to make decisions, especially people who were not brought up in the generation where that was, the norm. I want to thank you, Justin, for joining me today. And what a great conversation. I always learn from you, like every time I learn something new. So thank you for that. And for everyone else out there, please visit cdomagazine.tech for additional interviews.